163. Um, I don't know. We could start with last night, which was July 4th, and I did the math, and as many, as much as the total tonnage of explosives blown up in LA last night illegally, because there were no legal fireworks shows, equaled the tonnage of explosives expended during the Vietnam War during a single day. Except our explosives in LA are sparklier.
I think it matched Hiroshima, wasn't it?
It felt like it.
I mean, I mean, if you do the math, it was it was the same as all the bombs in World War II plus Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined.
There, I base my calculations on 300 explosions a second for, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 hours.
All right. Well,
It was very explodey.
all
I,
right. All right.
okay, so now
I,
I have an art dilemma that leads to a political thing, which
okay.
is, I've talked about this for the last couple of weeks, but Carol likes micro mosaics. So every once in a while, I'll take a look around and see if there are any, like, not micro mosaics, but, like, actual size mosaics that don't suck. I'll check Etsy, I'll check eBay, and mosaics are kind of, as we decided, are a lost art, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So a, a week or two ago, I found one place that makes good mosaics out of the whole fucking world. There are probably other places, like, I know the Vatican Mosaic Workshop makes good ones, but those are generally thousands of dollars. But I found a place where they're as good as the Vatican's mosaics, and they're reasonably priced, and it's St. Petersburg, Russia. Um, so I'm probably being, I assume that there's an FBI file on me anyway, because I go on Twitter a lot, and there have been documentaries on how I'm kind of a lunatic. So I assume that, I assume there's a little something about me at the FBI, but now there will probably be a lot more, because I've been negotiating a deal with a couple people in St. Petersburg, and I use Google Translate. So now all of a sudden I'm sending all these emails and also a bunch of photos in Russian to St. Petersburg. And so I made a deal. I'm going to wire the money tomorrow for a nice mosaic. And my question is, but don't respond yet, because there's one more thing to add. My question is it right to do business with people in a country whose leader is paying our enemies to kill our soldiers? And the thing to add is that there is a $13 government fee, a customs fee, that I will be paying. So in other words, out of the money that I'm sending to Russia, in addition to the money I'm paying for the mosaic that will, work its way through the economy, I'm paying $13 that's going to go right to the government. And I don't feel great about that. I don't feel that bad because it's only $13, but Russia is our fucking enemy. So, I want to know what you think.
Um, I think that you're a fool to send money to Russia. I mean,
Because you don't think they may not
it's not
send
a matter
anything
of
back?
that. Yeah, that's the reason. I don't think they'll send anything back.
I don't know. They seem to be like legitimate artists. I mean, if you reach out and contact somebody whose art is for sale, it's reasonable to think that they'll sell the art.
Well, I mean, they'll do this with a whole woman, let alone a mosaic.
Well,
That would be my fear.
if somebody from Moscow contacted you and wanted to commission you to do a piece or to buy a piece that you have up on your website, would you sell to somebody in Russia?
Well, I can't because I have a lot of deals with people from Nigeria going on right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, no, I don't think it's a reliable situation. I don't know. I don't know. I think you'd have to. Uh, I don't think so. I think you'd have to go there and buy it from them because what recourse do you have if they
Well,
just
I
decide to
would have
keep the money?
recourse. I'd have recourse um, if I put it on a credit card. But since I'm wire transferring, it's going to go from a bank to a bank, and banks don't reimburse you if you get taken. But I really don't think I'm going to get taken in that I
That's
reached
what
out to this
everybody.
person who is offering their wares.
Yeah, in every spy movie, and you and I judge everything by movies we've seen.
Yeah,
The guy thinks he's picking up on the girl, but in reality, the girl is just placed there to get him to react.
right. Like when
So I don't.
Carol and I watch hours of Netflix every day now, and we just lie there slumped, me on the floor in my ab roller and Carol on the couch, and every couple minutes we yell at the TV, "It's a setup! It's a setup!" And it's always a setup.
Yeah, and if you've seen that much TV, then you shouldn't need my advice.
Well, let's
So
assume that it's legit. Would you do a legit deal with a Russian citizen?
yeah, I would because I'm a Trump supporter, and we collude with Russia constantly.
Okay.
So but getting to our political discussion, since you approached me with that accusation last week, the Trump administration gave an official reply, which I think makes perfect sense. And you probably didn't hear because the Democrat media lies to you.
No, I've heard
And
various things. Let's see if I heard what you're going to tell me.
well, they said that the reason the president wasn't informed of it is because it was raw intelligence that hadn't been verified. And if the intelligence community gave every piece of information they get to the president, he'd be swamped with things, two-thirds of which turn out not to even be true.
Yeah, I did hear
So,
that it didn't rise to the level that the president would be told, and then various other sources, including Bolton, said he was briefed.
well, again, I don't know. Bolton has not proven himself to be loyal. I don't. I don't consider him to be a trustworthy witness because he has some anger at the president. He's a disgruntled ex-employee, and he broke one of the cardinal rules of someone in that position, and that is if you don't agree with a person's policy, you tell them right. You announce to the public, I don't agree with this person's policy and I'm resigning. And that's it. Everything's up front, everything's out in the open. But what Bolton did was while the guy is still in office, just months after they've had delicate negotiations with countries around the world, Bolton writes a book. And I mean, I can understand him waiting until Trump had left office, waiting 3 or 4 years. But in the middle of a presidential administration for the top guy, one of the top people, to write a tell-all book, to me, he has no credibility.
So, well,
Uh,
neither side, neither liberals nor conservatives are happy with Bolton. You for the reasons you've listed, liberals because Bolton writes this whole book full of damning things about Trump, impeachable things. But he kept his mouth shut during the actual impeachment. So
yeah,
people,
so
liberals are pissed saying, oh, he shut up so he could get a paycheck later.
yeah, well, exactly. So I don't, But anyway, let's move on unless you have more. I don't think you have any more proof than you've already given me.
Well,
So,
I mean that it's been thorough that the government, the White House, you said the White House said one thing, but other spokespeople have said that no, nobody's denying that this was the case. Um, you've got three major newspapers, one of which is conservative, have verified it. Intelligence agencies have verified it. Now, the amount paid, I've only heard one amount, and I don't know if that's been verified, but the one thing I read, and I didn't try to find other numbers because lazy, but it was $100,000 per dead soldier. Um,
yeah, I don't think you need. I mean, somebody made a very reasonable argument. Um, I think it was Mark Stein, and he said, "Since when do we need to pay the Afghans to shoot Americans? The Taliban.
yeah,
I mean, they never stopped shooting Americans.
except that we're in the middle of negotiating a peace treaty of sorts with them while this is going on. So you
Yeah,
might
and
expect the Taliban to, ease up a little bit on the killing.
well, I mean, that's exactly what the negotiations are about. And we made it clear to them that we weren't going to leave with our tail between our legs. If they were killing our people, we were going to stay. So there had been lulls in all this. There have been times when they didn't, and so go ahead.
No, yeah, I do have a question that just popped into my head, which is, Afghanistan has been perhaps the world's least tractable country, least regulatable country. Other great powers have gone into Afghanistan and tried to establish some order, and everybody's failed until now. And the Soviet Union's failure to control Afghanistan was so vast that it contributed to the end of the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah, I mean
So how
they
would you
put in a
rank?
huge they put in a huge army
Yeah.
that was kind of beaten up. It wasn't really beaten, but it was a huge uh, quagmire for them.
So how would you rate how the U.S. has done? It's been our longest war in history.
Well, what has happened is this. Um, Trump was given a decision when he took office. He had a choice. He could end the Taliban completely, but he'd have to kill countless thousands of civilians. And I mean, he could carpet bomb their areas, and I mean, it would just be a bloodbath. Or they could maintain this sort of uneasy, uh, kind of belligerent truce where the government of Afghanistan, who's on our side, would try to root out the Taliban and, in places, make deals with them if they would give up their aggression. So that's what he's trying to do. And at this point, our goal was to prevent Afghanistan from being a launch pad for Al Qaeda. Now, we accomplished our mission. At the same time, we wanted assurances that that wasn't going to happen again, and that they would know that they would not again try to be a launch pad for Al Qaeda. And we kind of sort of have that now, given that the government is pro-American. So
What about
now
some of the other stuff?
I'm not done.
Okay.
So now what you have in Afghanistan is a country that is basically unruly, and it's up to the U.S. military to constantly try to root people out, send in Navy SEALs everywhere. And one of the things that Trump said, and I think it makes sense, is that we were supposed to win a war and get certain things accomplished. We're not supposed to become the police force for the Afghan government, which is what we are now. As far as Russia goes, though, again, as I said last week, I mentioned to you that I think it's naive to think that Russia ever stops trying to help our enemies wherever they are. And that's not to say that Trump should look the other way, but at the
But he
same
hasn't.
time,
He has kind of. He hasn't denounced it. It's this has been out for close to 2 weeks now.
well, because our official position is that we're not confirming that it happened.
But
And
shouldn't he
I
condemn it though? Like why because he's been condemning.
why would he need to? The point is that when we deal with China, when we deal with any country that we're belligerent with, they're doing things to get us. I mean, right now as we speak, there are Chinese and Russian and Iranian spies in our country, and we know that. So I think the press is holding Trump to an unrealistic standard.
Well, can't
If
he
he
even
thinks
say that if he's said that it didn't rise to the level of 100%, even though other people are saying yeah, but shouldn't he at least say that if this is true, I condemn it in no uncertain terms? Why can't he do that? Because I mean, he's been condemning
because
people.
because what the Democrats want to do is they want to embarrass Trump. And if this was handled by mature Democrats, they would have quietly gone to the White House and said, look, we found this. Do you have a plan to deal with it? Can you influence Putin? But instead, they wanted to put Trump in a position where he either goes to war with Russia or he looks like a putz, like a
What
wimp.
about sanctions or just saying I don't like this? Because he's been
Because
pushing to get Putin. I mean, what
be,
I read is that that it's weird that they're paying to kill our soldiers, and Trump is pushing for Russia to get in back into the G7, turn it into the G8, I guess. And I mean, at the very least, he could say, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to push that hard. Because they're not even a G8 country; they're like a G11 country.
well, because he hasn't officially acknowledged that this has happened. And I'm sorry, Rick, but I know there are Democrats in the intelligence bureaus that would like to humiliate Trump. Uh, I'm certain of that because they came up with the whole Russia hoax. So I don't want the president making foreign policy based on leaks to the New York Times from potentially treasonous Democrat espionage people.
Well, all right,
That that
all right. I mean, all
it's
that
not up to
I
him to
consider all
do
that
that.
bullshit. But let's just leave that for a second and say, why should Russia be back in the G7, G8? Would it make them
This is
behave
this is
better?
this is part of elaborate negotiations. This is There are things going on between Russia and the U.S. right now that are, we use the carrot and the stick with Russia. At any given time, we have sanctions and we have rewards on Russia. So if Trump is offering them the reward of the G8, there's probably something else going on. They may be doing something else for us. Maybe he's offering them this if they stop killing our people. Who knows?
Well, I don't
So,
know. Maybe we should know. It wasn't. It wasn't the intelligence agencies who made this public. It was the newspapers.
yeah, well, it was from a leak from somebody in our intelligence community that should have kept their mouth shut. So,
I don't know. I didn't. I don't know where it came.
I don't want American foreign policy to be determined by traders at the New York Times who want to put the look. I mean, if we do everything that the New York Times and the president's enemies want, I really think we could end up at war with Russia. I mean, the if you really want to solve the situation, as I said, if your goal is patriotic, then you would go to Trump quietly and say, these are our concerns. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer would go to him quietly and say, this is a clandestine thing going on that we heard about from the intelligence community. Nothing is public. What do you want to do about this? What do you know? That's what you would do. You wouldn't carry this whole thing out in front of the world in the newspapers. So
I
I
don't know.
don't
What
think
if I
it's
mean? Would
I
you say
don't
you'd
think
say
it's
the
a
same? You'd say
serious.
the same deal. You'd say the same deal if Obama were president, and you wouldn't want the newspapers to announce that Putin was paying to kill our. Because I mean, we were the whole Obama administration. We were in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well,
Most of the Bush
yeah,
administration.
and during that time, I'm sure that the Russians were helping the Taliban. I mean, it wouldn't even occur to me that they weren't helping the Taliban. They may say publicly that they're not, and we may say we have no knowledge of it, but I'm over 14 years old, and I'm sure they were doing that. So, I mean, this kind of thing, the one thing you don't do is, I'll give you an example. Trump is now playing games with Russia to see if he can get them in the G8, which may benefit some of their oligarchs, make Putin a little cash. Who knows? Well, what Obama did when he first took office, without any prompting whatsoever, was he removed nuclear missile defense from Eastern Europe. He pulled weapons systems that we had put in Poland in order to defend NATO. He pulled them right out as a gift to Putin. He said, look, I want to do this to improve relations with Putin. Putin didn't even ask him to do it. So if you do things like that, yeah, then that's something that is a change in American policy where you're bending over backwards to the Russians.
Okay.
But finding out that the Russians are aiding and comforting our enemies in the Taliban, well, that's precisely what we're negotiating about right now when we're trying to get out of Afghanistan.
All
So,
right. So, what about some other like? Can little girls go to school in Kabul and other big Afghan cities?
in the country of Afghanistan, little girls can get married at the age of 6. It is the most child molesting country in the world because they take the prophets, Muhammad's marriage very seriously. As you know, if you watch our program,
All right. All right. All right.
Muhammad the prophet had sex with a 9-year-old girl named Aisha, who became his wife. She was a Christian slave. And so in Afghanistan, they habitually, to this day, have sex with children,
Yeah, but just
boys and
answer
girls.
my question about can girls go to school? Did we accomplish any social goals after 19 years over there? Have we
We did,
made?
we
Did
did,
we achieve any lasting social goals?
we did not change a barbaric country into a country that wasn't barbaric.
Can
What we
girls
did
go to
was,
school? That's all I'm asking. Just that one question.
in some parts of Afghanistan and other parts, they risk getting acid thrown in their face. But what we did do was change a government that was harboring Al Qaeda terrorists into a government that is fighting Al Qaeda terrorists. So basically, we made them into a less harmful to us country. And that's
Okay.
sometimes all you get.
All right. So that's a good point to move on to I guess we should talk about coronavirus.
Well, we
Um,
always do. What do you have
well,
to
we
say,
have, I mean,
Rick?
that's what's going on. You came to my house a couple. Okay. So our director was trying to get us to talk about others, um, I think this is probably going to, you say you've got a number of things to talk about. I assume that, well, or
Well,
is,
I'll just tell you what they are.
well,
This
statues. What
is
about statues? Statues in your mix?
no, but we can talk about it if you want to.
Just for a second, or maybe not a second, depending on how it goes. Like, apparently, well, not apparently, a statue of Frederick Douglass, a slave turned, anti-slavery activist, um, was knocked off its stand and damaged. And conservatives, Trump and I think Trump Jr. were saying, it's bad when statue destroying liberals are destroying even statues of Frederick Douglass. And then liberals on Twitter, I just read about, I don't know that much about it, but like liberals are saying, well, obviously, um, it wasn't liberals, it was like Boogaloo Boys or Proud Boys, or it was right wing, white power people knocking over that statue. So, but no,
Yeah,
but I
and
I
I
haven't read anything more about it. Um, it wasn't a mob of protesters, so I don't know that anybody knows exactly who it was.
well, here's the thing. Maybe I should live in some state or some part of some state where there are a lot of racists, but I personally have never met an American racist. I mean, a real, and I'm constantly meeting left wingers that really want these statues destroyed. I mean, I've had vigorous debates with hundreds of people. I have a Facebook group where we discuss this issue. It's one of the main issues we discuss, and there are 1,200 people in the group. And all the liberals that I talk with enjoy the fact that these statues are being destroyed, and I haven't heard a single person, either in my real life or in the groups I belong to, say, well, now we need to get people that were anti-slavery, their statues destroyed. And the reason is that I don't know anybody that's pro-slavery. Even the most racist person I have met, and even then they weren't that racist, but even if they were, they weren't for slavery.
Mhm.
So I think that what the Democrats want is they want to be able to riot and still have you love them by saying, oh, well, Republicans are responsible for these things. It's Trump that they're just destroying different statues. And so every leftist I know is convinced that there are these marauding groups of KKK and racist people that want to bring back slavery and murder black people
No. Well,
going around, and I've never met those people.
yeah,
So
well, we
you
live in
know, you
LA,
know,
so we're not going to meet them at the Rite Aid.
right,
Um,
but what I'm saying is I don't meet them when I'm talking with people in groups on Facebook,
yeah, I don't know if
where
Facebook is the place. I think it's more
no
like
no no
4chan or Reddit.
but what I'm saying is I read the comments of people from all over the country. I've met people from all over the country in my personal life, and I don't know anybody that wants. There are only about 3,000 members of the KKK.
Hmm.
All right. If you were to listen to left-wing media, you'd think that there were 100,000 of them running around, running governments, and
No,
they,
no.
you know. but you would, and even if they weren't, you'd think that there was this subgroup of the majority of whites that want to destroy black people and destroy their statues.
Well,
And so
okay,
I just don't
but I
believe that.
do. There's video of people who don't agree with what the liberal protesters are doing, who show up to stir up shit. And in
No,
fact,
they show up
I was that person once.
they
There was
show
a
up
when I was in a frat at the University of Colorado, there used to be a nuclear trigger plant at a place called Rocky Flats on the way to Golden, Colorado, about 20 miles outside of Boulder. And there was this huge anti-nuke rally. And guys in my frat decided it would be funny without holding any, we didn't have any particular animus to the anti-nuclear people. We just thought it would be funny to stir up some shit. So I got in the truck or car with them, and we had 5-gallon buckets filled with styrofoam beads, and we put like has nuclear waste labels on them, and we went to this protest with stupid signs like more nukes, more nukes, less kooks, and we spilled radioactive material and just to get everybody, it was just styrofoam beads, but we did it just because we thought it would be funny to fuck with all these protesters. So I'm not saying I was not in the KKK, and I didn't find the protesters reprehensible. We just were idiots who wanted to do stupid shit.
Well, look, I think we have proof. We have videos of left-wingers destroying statues of abolitionists. So I discussed this with you last week. There are several prominent abolitionists and anti-slave activists whose statues were destroyed by left-wingers.
Were they just misinformed, or what was their fucking deal?
Well, I mean, I don't know. They weren't interviewed, but you just have to assume that people that would destroy statues are idiots, and I feel that left-wingers are idiots, so it makes sense to me.
Yeah, but you can't deny that there are right-wing idiots too. Not everybody on the right wing is a fucking genius. So it's perfectly reasonable to think, and there's video of right-wing idiots doing idiotic shit recently. So you can't eliminate the possibility that it was either idiots doing stuff for the sake of being an idiot, or right-winger idiots doing, stirring up shit for right-wing reasons.
Well, then why don't they take credit for it so we understand the meaning of their action?
Well, I mean, then you get into the whole false flag shit. But anyway, I don't know if we're going to get any further with it. So, I mean...
Well, no, what I'm saying is the left-wingers that are destroying statues are very proud of it. They take videos of themselves. They announce their alliance with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, well, nobody took responsibility. Nobody was proud of pulling down Frederick Douglass. There's no video of that. Nobody issued a statement or anything like that.
Right. One more reason that I think the point being made by these right-wingers was never made. So there's no purpose to it.
What would their announcement be? That what, you're going to pull down like Confederates and we're going to pull down black guys?
Yeah, at least people would then understand that they had made some kind of gesture of defiance and vengeance, just doing it like all the other left-wingers are doing it, destroying things that they don't even know the meaning of. So, I mean, left-wingers vandalized Lincoln. I keep telling you, they're vandalizing everything because the left-wingers that I've talked to, I used to teach in high schools, And after years of education in America, I would get in classrooms full of Hispanics and blacks and what young white kids who were convinced that Lincoln was a slave owner. So I mean, to these people, to left wingers, everybody in history was evil. I mean, General Grant was destroyed by left wingers recently, and he did more to end slavery than anybody but Lincoln himself. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rick, I don't buy your theory that
But what, that idiots come in all flavors?
I think that it is a general rule about conservatives that we don't riot the way that left wingers do. I mean, it wasn't left. It wasn't Trump supporters that were burning down Chicago and Minneapolis and
What
New
about
York.
Charleston with the guys with the tiki torches in 2017 saying Jews will not replace us? Those were not liberals.
Well, they can say that. I don't deny that there are right wingers in Charleston that are,
They
you
had
know,
rallies. They had that whole
they,
fucking rally, the Unite the
yeah, but
Right rally.
okay, but um, there was a conflict with Antifa with left wingers who were going to pull that statue down. They ended up killing one of the left wingers with a
Yeah, the
car.
guy drove a car through a
Right,
crowd,
right. But
as happened yesterday too.
yeah, but that guy that drove the car through the crowd was a black guy that was trying to drive on the freeway, and he
Wait,
encountered
no, wait, which guy are we talking about? I'm talking about Charleston 3 years ago.
yeah,
That
the
was a white
Charleston
guy
tree.
in a like a Dodge Charger.
Yeah, yeah. And then you said yesterday it happened again, and
Yeah,
what
I don't know
happened
what
again?
it turned out to
What
be. Just
happened?
it
What
wasn't
happened
political.
yesterday was the left wingers had shut down a freeway, and somebody was driving on the freeway and killed one of them. And the
Well,
guy that killed the left winger, the driver, was a black man.
how did he not know that the freeway was closed down?
I don't know. Maybe I mean when left wingers go crazy and start shutting freeways down, they're not very responsible about giving people warnings.
I don't know.
So
He was
maybe
the only one. He must have been the worst fucking driver in the world. I don't know more about that.
well, Rick, you can't make excuses. Your side likes to shut down freeways, likes to burn cities. Do you know that there are hundreds of black-owned businesses that were destroyed by your side's riots this past 3 weeks? Hundreds. And do you know that over 300 cops were attacked by left-wingers, by Democrats in these past few riots? Over 300 cops. Quite a few were killed. Quite a few black cops were killed.
How many?
There were over 2 dozen black people that were killed because of you Democrats rioting this past 3 weeks. So because of what happened to Floyd, who it may not have even been because of racism. It was just a bad cop that was always doing things like that to everybody. He even attacked white people before he did this to a black guy. But because of one black person being killed, the
Well, no,
Democrats
it's not just because of
rioted.
one it's because of hundreds of black people getting killed every year, and because
No,
of
no, it's not. It's
unequal
Rick.
policing across races.
It's not unequal policing at all. Uh, the police. We went over these numbers before, but
Yeah,
I guess I have to
so we can
repeat it.
skip it if you want, because
No, no,
we're
no,
just
no. We
having an
can't
old
skip
argument.
it. We can't skip it because you just lied. You said that the police are hunting black people, and there's no proof for that. They shoot quite a few unarmed white people, and
They
every
shoot black
year,
people at 2.5 times the rate of non-black people.
and that's because they have 2.5 times the encounters with violent black people than they do with white people. So you can't make this charge, Rick. It's not.
You
But as a
can because you can because it's not because black people are inherently more violent or more crime prone. It's
I didn't say that. You deliberately go to race baiting. You deliberately call me a racist. What happens is this. Black people, for whatever reason, maybe because they're people of great nobility, but regardless of what the reason is, it's irrelevant. They have more contact with the police, and so more of them, percentage-wise, get killed by the police. And I will say that for those of you new to our show, in 2019, 19 white people that were unarmed were killed by the police, and 9 black people that were unarmed were killed by the police. And of the 9 black people that were killed by the police, most of them attacked the police with their bare hands.
yeah. Well,
So
okay. So
there were a handful of terribly, terribly unfair and unjustified deaths of unarmed black people at the hands of the police, and those police are in the process of being punished, and hopefully punished to the furthest extent of the law.
so before we move on, just if I'll take your numbers: 19 unarmed white people, 9 unarmed black people. But black people are only 12.8% of the population, while white people are roughly, I don't know, 55% of the population.
Right,
So,
and and black people commit 4 or 5 times more crime.
or black people are caught committing that. So I mean, you can still argue that it's unequal policing.
No, you can argue that if you have 13% of the population committing 55% of the murders, then they're more likely to get shot than the white people who aren't doing that.
You're saying you know the statistic
Yeah,
that
13% of the population are black. Of that 13%, 6.5% are black men, and they commit 50%, I believe over 50% of the murders in the United States.
so when we break, I'll look that up.
Okay?
But
Well,
let's move on to COVID.
it's a very well known statistic. I mean,
All right.
this even the left wing media can't deny that one.
All right, COVID. We've been
All
setting
right.
records for the most new cases per day for the last week. We've it's it's been the worst week for new cases. It's been the worst month for new cases. It's been the worst day of the week for new cases every day this week. Um, so it hasn't been. It's what's happened in all the European countries is that new cases have dropped by 80-90% sometime, and we're going in the opposite direction. Now, deaths peaked at 2,500 a day, nearly 3,000 a day, 2 months ago, and they've declined to roughly 600 a day. But I expect the deaths to start climbing back up over 1,000 a day because there's a 3-4 week lag between new cases and um, and deaths. Takes 3-4 weeks to be killed by this stuff on average. Um, though I don't think the daily deaths, at least for a while, won't won't go back up to the April levels because even though the nation and some states in particular have been bad at having everybody wear masks, at least um, old people are better at staying inside, which I think is knocking down the death rates.
All right. So a lot to say about the topic. The first thing is, do you know how many people died in California today because of COVID?
Not that many.
6.
Yeah.
There are 6 people that died.
Well,
And in Texas, um, something like, I don't know, I believe about 20.
yeah. Well,
Now,
okay. It's a weird day to talk about it because it's a
it's
Sunday
always,
on a 3-day weekend. So talk
okay.
to me. Tuesday is
So,
usually when the death tally catches up. On a
okay.
weekend and on a
Well,
Sunday, Sunday counts aren't accurate. So we will
Well, they're
see.
accurate. They're just the part that you don't want to talk about, and that
No,
is
I
that
do. I will talk
basically
about it.
it's
If you look at the numbers,
deaths are
if you
going
look
down.
at the numbers, the Sunday numbers are always vastly lower than any other day of the week because
Okay.
not every venue reports until after the weekend, particularly a holiday weekend. So just, I mean,
Well,
go to
I
Worldometer,
heard.
the site we both use, and the death rates and the new case rates, they all drop significantly on weekends, and it's not because people aren't dying on weekends, it's because their deaths aren't reported on the weekend. It takes a day or two after the weekend for reporting to catch up. Not everybody works 7 days a week.
Okay. Well, regardless of how you want to look at it, um, regardless of the reporting and the amount of deaths, there are several statistics. There are several points I need to make, and you can't interrupt me, okay? So
Hmm.
I'll address that point right now. Texas and Florida had a spike in deaths, but it's beginning to go down in in both states. And if you look at the numbers of deaths in Texas and Florida, they've always been very low. So the the terrifying thing that happened this week is that the media went crazy and the Democrats went crazy because there were these massive spikes in Texas and Florida. Well, what they don't tell you is that Texas and Florida never, almost never get more than 30 or 40 people dying, whereas a state like New York can have 1,000 people dying when they have a spike. So statistically, if Texas goes, and you know statistics, you know math,
Hmm.
if you've got a population of 25 million, which is their population in Texas is roughly the same as New York, and you have a spike that goes from 14 to 40. It seems like you could go on the news and say Texas has tripled their numbers of deaths, but it's statistically irrelevant. It doesn't mean it's not a big enough trend. In New York, when they went from 50 to 1,000 in a couple of weeks, that was a statistically relevant number. So what I'm saying is, even if there are spikes in Texas and Florida, we're talking about spikes that at most go up to about 60 people, which is almost a normal flu season. You wouldn't shut down an entire state of 25 million people when you had a disease that was taking 30 people a day.
You
It's
would,
just,
however, like expect people to wear masks if you asked them to, and you would
well,
ask them to wear masks.
that's a
Well,
separate issue. That I
well,
would like to go on, please. Now, one of the deceptive things is that California does go up and down, and it has remained steady. So I'll give you that the numbers always go down on the weekends, but then they always go up in the middle of the week. And one of the states that never seems to change much is California. If you look at the trends, we are still one of the most locked down states in the union. We're infinitely more locked down than Texas and Florida. In Florida, they've opened up theme parks. California is locked down, and our death numbers aren't changing. We remain steady.
Yeah, but if
So
you're out on the street, you
that's
go
what I
out, you see that we're
so
not
that's
as
what I
locked down as I mean, we're not. People are out. People are
well
wearing masks, either not at all or shittily.
of the states, California is arguably the most locked down. So there are a million things we can't do in California, and our numbers aren't changing. So that's another reason for me not to have a lockdown. It just
Except,
doesn't make
well,
any
they're
difference
not changed. I mean, it was one of the earlier states to lock down.
to lock down. Yeah, yeah. So what I'm saying
So
is nothing has helped.
well,
Nothing's
no, but
things aren't
if
changing much.
California's been locked down the whole time, then you can't argue that nothing has helped. You could, I guess, but it's a fallacious argument. You can argue that the locking down has helped keep things steady instead of at a lower level than it would be if it weren't locked down. And I would argue
If you
shit is not
believe
locked
that,
down very well at all because
if
I
you
go
believe
out.
that,
What?
yeah, and what I'm telling you is that I don't believe the lockdown is what's doing all of this. I don't think that it is American people's actions. This leads me to my final and my most important point, because the Democrats out there listening are very badly informed. If you go to the Worldometer, which tracks the deaths, and you look up death rate in the U.S., it is in absolutely steady decline from at one point 3,000 a day. Today we had around 200 deaths. And
247 deaths listed on a Sunday.
okay, but my point is that even during the week, at this rate it'll go up to around 400 deaths from 3,000.
So five, six
Okay.
hundred.
Okay. Well, you can argue, you can predict whatever you think, but my point is that any rational person looking at the chart, regardless of day of the week, will see that the U.S. death rate has cascaded down. And
Yeah, it's
my
roughly a quarter of what it was
yeah,
at its peak.
but if you look at the chart, and what you can do is you can take a calipers. A calipers is a little device that measures. Let me just show people a calipers. This is a small, hang on. This is a measuring device, okay? If you put this up to the chart, you can measure where the COVID will end. You can actually measure back how far it was going to be, because it lists the months, and you can see, oh, I'll put this here, where it will end if the trend continues.
Yeah, but
And if you look at the chart, don't interrupt me every two sentences.
all right, but
If you
that's
look at
just
the
nonsense. But okay, all right, okay.
if you look at the chart as it's going down, COVID should be pretty much gone by August the 1st.
Well, yeah,
That's
they
what the
said that.
chart
They said
says.
they used that same method. The White House used that same method. They called it a cubic equation model, a cubic model, to predict it would be to zero by May 1st. And here we are in July, and it's not to zero. The
Okay.
using curve fitting is bullshit, because you don't know, there are an infinite number of curves that go off of the existing curve, and the Worldometer itself says that its best guess um, is we'll have 175,000 U.S. dead by October 1st, but it gives a range because there are a number of different curves. And if you want to go shopping for curves, 538.com gives you like 6 different curves that predict. There's the Harvard model, there's 2 other university models, and
Okay.
they all have different
All
curve
right.
ranges.
You're confusing everyone.
Just
Let me just show
legalistic.
the public. No, no, wait. Let me just show the public. You said you'd let me talk. Now
Okay.
this is what it looks like. All right. I don't have it right here. I didn't make a copy of it. This is March. Okay? It went up and peaked late April. It's going down like this. The death
But
rate is going down. This
it's
is where
not
we're
going
at.
down like that. It's not going. You've drawn a
It,
straight
it goes
line.
it goes up and down, but it's always going down.
It's going.
Okay?
It's
Rick,
flattened
Rick,
extreme.
Rick,
Hold on,
people
fucking. Because
understand that
you've
it
drawn
goes
a straight line. You've drawn a fucking straight line there, right? It's a straight line. Except that the
Rick,
actual curve, if you look it up on Worldometer, is not a straight line. It's a little
Rick,
scoop. Did you fix it so it's not a
Rick.
straight?
Look.
That's a straight fucking
What
line.
happened? Rick. It goes down, then it goes up, then it goes